session is going to be absolutely fantastic. It is a masterclass in strategy-led brand design. Please welcome to the stage the Head of Design and Creative Impact from Brand Lounge, Mr. Saad, and the Head of Strategy and Insights from Brand Lounge, Mr. Ibrahim Lahoud.
Test. Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hi, guys. We're going to try to make it before lunch, so don't you move. We're very happy to be here today. It's been an amazing 2 days. But what we're really excited about is that for a change, we're not going to talk advertising and marketing. We're going to talk about what actually we're the people who feed marketeers and advertising with the right beef to do an amazing job. So we're just one big happy family, right? I'm Ibrahim Lahoud. I'm head of strategy and insights at Brand Lounge. And
hi, I'm Saad. I'm the head of, he's my better half. I'm the other guy. I'm the head of design and creative at Brand Lounge. And since you guys might not know who we are, we thought we would introduce ourselves through a small video, and then we will talk you through the rest later.
That saved us a lot of talk. OK. Usually, whenever we actually ask people around, we always do this exercise. We're not going to do it today for the sake of time. We always ask people, tell me about your favorite brand and tell me why. Amazingly, everybody tells us they are in love with their brand, either because it connects with them, it reflects their own identity, it's got something special about it. It's always about those emotions and about those feelings actually we've been hearing about a while ago in previous talks. And definitely, they find out, as much as we already know, that a brand is not a logo. And that's the gist of everything we're going to try and talk about today. A brand is not a logo. Nobody. I mean, think about it. Would you ever step in a shop, find a nice suit, and then look outside, say, they have an ugly logo, I'm going to go somewhere else. We never do that. It's strategy. Everything at the core is about brand strategy. Actually, Mr. Jack Trout nailed it very well. He coined the positioning, the term positioning, and he said positioning is how we differentiate yourself in the minds, actually, and the hearts of your prospects. That's where all the difference happens. A brand is about perception. We have a tendency always to tell our clients whenever we sit with them, don't get me wrong, but we don't care what you think. We care about what your market will perceive about how good you are. So it's irrelevant how you think you're good. If I say you're not, you're not. And that's why we always say we are the owners of brands. Companies don't own their brands. We own it, we the people. We can make it or we can break it. Now, we really need to think very carefully about that. A brand can be about everything and everyone. I mean, think about all the celebrities we know. Think about cities, nations, products, services. Everything and everyone can be a brand. And when we combine the power of all of those into one big organization, this is where when we think Tesla, we think Elon Musk. When we think Apple, we think about the late Steve Jobs. And when they come together, they actually help amplify and magnify the entire brand as a whole. A brand has to stand for something. One of our favorite stand for something moment is Starbucks, because they keep telling us, Starbucks, we are the third place between your office and your home. How nice is that? I mean, when we go to Starbucks now, you would see a lot of people not actually drinking coffee. Starbucks is not a coffee shop anymore. Starbucks is about conviviality. This is where we hang out. We can have a juice, a sandwich. If you go to the design district in Dubai, you can have nothing because they have plenty of tables outside, so you can hang out. But they stand for something. Apple always has been about the choice to be your best, the power to be your best. And then at the end, they tell you, think different. Apple is not a technology company. They are not. They are more of an experience company.
Finally,
Definitely.
something for me. Thanks.
Did anybody say anything? Definitely a brand is about a visual image. But that visual image is the compilation of everything we embed in it. So it's definitely not about you liking red or blue. It's about what red and blue actually needs to tell me, and what happens before I reach that point in time. And definitely, to make everyone else in the room happy, a brand communicates to the world. Definitely, if we don't communicate, we don't have a brand. But if we don't have a brand, we can't communicate either. It's that perfect synergy that happens between all the powerful buildup we create under the water level with that big iceberg. This might be the tip, but this is the most important one. And it's fed by everything that happens in the background. How do we do it at Brand Lounge? Basically, we work around 4 dimensions. We call them the 4 dimensions of differentiation. We always start with purpose. We call the soul differentiator. The purpose answers one big question, the toughest question of all. Why do we exist? Most of the time when we sit with clients and they start telling us what they do and who they are, and we are this and we are that, and we have the best products, blah, 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 and then you ask, okay, hold on, why do you exist? And they say, huh? I say, yeah, why do you exist? Do you exist to compete? You exist to be the best, as everybody does. You exist to be transparent and put it in your value. It's not about that. Purpose answers 2 very important questions. What's our contribution? And what's the impact of that contribution on the market? The contribution is very easy. Banks excel at it. We exist to be the largest financial institution in the world. Beautiful. What's the impact of that? What's in it for me? And the impact is actually where a brand starts connecting with the customers. The second dimension is innovation. Now, whenever we hear innovation, especially in forums like that, we always think about, let's do a nice app. Innovation is not about technology. Innovation is about 3 very important things. One, the incremental differentiation. What can you do better than your competition? Airbnb came and said, why do you need to stay in a hotel room? Let's do something better. Airbnb is not about technology. Airbnb uses an app, uses technology to serve its incremental innovation. Same as Uber, same as everybody else. The second part of innovation is your business model. How do you engineer an organization that can serve your purpose? And the third is what we call the disruptive innovation. Still, it does not have to be about technology. Again, Airbnb and Uber disrupted the market, but they were not technology companies. So that's very important to understand. And people ask us sometimes, what has innovation got to do with what you do, guys? Because they think we do logos. And we try to explain it to them. The third dimension is culture. What we say about culture is that the moment you have more than one person in a room, culture already happened. You know, the water dispenser and two people having a cup of water, and they start talking. Did you see the new guy? He sucks. Culture happens. How do you control culture is very important. Why is it important? Because culture rallies on the inside the people who are going to promote you on the outside. It all starts internally. And trust me, values like transparency do not work anymore. Unless you want to slap it on your reception desk. We actually had that example we keep giving. We were sitting with a huge federal government in Dubai. And we sat with all the C-level, and we were doing our stakeholders interviews. And we asked everybody from the top, the chairman, down to you name it, what are your existing company values? They didn't know. And they were honest enough to say we didn't know. So we told them, you know what, maybe you should have honesty as a value. And the fourth and last dimension is image. This is the surface dimension. This is where everything we worked on in the background, on the purpose, on innovation, on culture, actually materialize. This is where you start really bringing out a brand. To do this, we chose an amazing case study today that we're going to take you through. We chose it on purpose because it's an international brand, it's a new brand, it's a luxury watch that was launched in Geneva, and the brief was that, you know, we need to sit among the big players. That was an extremely big challenge for us, being, you know, a locally homegrown brand consultancy, to work on something like that. And we're going to take you through that today. The brand is called Charles Zuber, okay? And it starts at 35,000 Swiss francs, just to give you an idea. So we were really shaking. So we went through our specific approach, which is made out of three levels: discover, uncover, differentiate. The first phase was the discovery phase. So during the discovery phase, we need to understand who is Charles Zuber. A jeweler who was born in the little town of Lucerne in Switzerland and who died quite recently. So we really needed to dive deep down to understand who this guy is, what did he achieve, and why his name is going to be on a watch. And why would he need to sit among those? And that was the biggest challenge. So we always start with doing a lot of internal interviews. But this time we expanded our interviews to cover collectors, watch collectors, investors, influencers, people in the luxury world, to really even professors in universities abroad, to really understand how does luxury play. Where can we win in a very competitive market? Then we produced a discovery report. I mean, these are just a couple of pages from, I think it was 200 to 120 pages, trying really to understand a market that's extremely complex and see where we can actually position ourselves in that big universe. And you'll see how we played it. Then we moved to phase two. After we do the discovery, we move to the uncover phase. This is where we work on what we call a co-creation model. We can never pretend to understand the brand as much or as good as our client does. And definitely our clients cannot do a better job than us. So imagine when we get together, that's an explosive mixture. So we do workshops where we work together on building the brand purpose, on understanding the brand culture, on looking at the products and services. We even got into the price point assessment. We look at the values and we define the personality of the brand. And as you can see, I was fatter back then. Then we move to phase three, which is the differentiate phase. So this is where we compile everything and we start actually working on finalizing the brand strategy, and then move into the fun part, which I'm going to hand to Mo in a while, so bear with me. So remember, I told you we're working on the story, so we really tried to understand the story of Charles Zuber and how did we reach here, but we really needed to frame it in a way that will make us understand how can we move the brand forward. So it was just a Genevan dream in the beginning. And he got into mastery when he started doing amazing jewelry. Actually, the guy never built a watch, he designed it. And it was built after he died by Eric Giroux, one of the most famous watch designers in the world. And these are his actual sketches, and we reached here. Then we tried to understand the brand archetype. I'm sure most of you know Carl Jung. So there was the lover, there was the magician, and there was the rebel. He was a lover, but I cannot get into specifics in this forum. We can talk apart. It's too... But then, now what? And that was the big question. And it was really the defining moment for us. So when we looked at the brand archetype of a rebel, lover, and magician, we said, okay, what brings them all together in that specific stage? And for us, it was the performer. So the brand archetype of Charles Zuber is the performer. And now we're going to see how we brought it to life really on the ground. Then we moved into developing the brand purpose based on the workshops and everything. And this is the brand purpose. We craft exuberant experiences to indulge in the life you desire. Remember contribution impact? So we craft exuberant experiences. That's our contribution. But what's the impact? Because you can indulge in the life you desire. It's very important. We're not talking about watches, if you noticed. And we always say, when you pay 35,000 Swiss francs for a watch, it's definitely not to tell the time. So you are basically indulging yourself into a luxury you can afford. And that's what really maximizes the entire experience. And then we simplify the narrative. That's what people usually call the headline, the slogan, or what have you. And we made it in French on purpose. La vie exubérante. So the actual brand slogan is in French. And it will be later translated into multiple languages. But we wanted to keep that tie between exuberance, luxury, Swiss, etc. But it doesn't stop there. Once you develop a strategy, you ask the big question, now what? Every strategy has implications. Business implications, retail implications, design implications, communication implications. So we framed it. We said, okay, usually when we talk about the Swiss watchmaking or the Swiss culture overall, it's always traditional, it's functional, and it's always a badge of honor. You know, the crown of Rolex, we did that. And we said, now we're going to move it to somewhere else. We're going to move traditional to the new luxury, and that was a big explosion in the Swiss arena. What? New? Swiss? Doesn't work. We told them, hold your horses. Then we're moving from functionality to emotionality. Definitely you're not telling the time. You have a connection with that watch, and not for the time. And we're moving from the badge of honor to an expansive experience. So now it's going to be all about experience. Again, you're going to see how it translates. So where does that lead us? New and Swiss. Neo-Swiss. And that was the word we actually coined. And now in Geneva, everybody's talking about it. The media is saying, who are these guys? What's Neo-Swiss? Neo-Swiss is keeping the Swiss essence at the base, but injecting that Neo aspect in it. We need to juggle with it, yes, but it's really amazing. Now we're going to see how we actually did it. I'm going to pass it on to Mo.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim. All right, everyone, let me walk you through how we identified a Neo-Swiss experience. So just to go back a couple of thoughts where Ibrahim started on the whole brand purpose and the positioning. The idea of a brand that has exuberance at its core is something completely new in the luxury space. When you think about luxury, you think about classic luxury. You think about things that are refined. You think about things that are expensive and that have a certain perception of style, right? We talked about perception earlier. But when you talk about Neo-Swiss, you really need to understand what does that mean. So we had to ask our question. How do we define a Neo-Swiss brand or luxury brand with exuberance at its core? And what does that mean? So here's what we did. The first step was, we said, thank you, strategy team. Really appreciate all the hard work you guys have done. You guys gave us a foundation. Now we need to do our own creative discovery and really understand, as many of the speakers told us today, we need to understand our audience, we need to understand what people are consuming these days, how this new generation is actually responding to luxury. So, a few things that we did. First we said, let's look at classic luxury. what defines the codes for classic luxury? Every design movement, every design approach has some sort of code. Cultures have codes, right? So we had to look at what does classic luxury look like today. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with everything you see on here. So essentially what we did was we looked at these, we audited them, we understood gold, silver, serif typefaces. Do we really want to stay within that space? Questions to ask. Then we looked at neo-luxury. Again, Gen Z doesn't necessarily have all the purchasing power in the world today, but they respond to these brands. They respond to the Off-Whites and the Balenciagas, regardless of the scandals. They respond to Apple. We define Apple as a luxury brand, mind you. We don't define it as a technology brand. And we looked at what does that space look like. So you've got more color. You don't see gold, you don't see silver, but you see black, you see white. Those are the interesting codes that come out. So then we asked ourselves, great, now we understood this part of luxury. And mind you, I'm summarizing this excessively. This was a very long process. The next question was, what does Swiss design look like? For those of you in the room that have gone to art school or design school, you probably studied Swiss design and you understand what that looks like and how that started. Our beautiful, infamous Helvetica and what Swiss brands look like today. The red, black, and white colors of Switzerland, they still exist and are heavily being used. So we said, okay, if that's Swiss design, then what is neo-Swiss design? So what we did was, we said, okay, let's look at the basic foundations of brand assets. In typography, we know that Swiss design looks at sans serifs, black and white text, bold text, the Helvetica movement. When it comes to photography, you look at conceptual, yet it also plays a secondary role. So photography is not a basic or is not a primary asset in your work. In grid systems, everything is in grids, everything is structured, right? And in mediums, of course, there was nothing but print back when Swiss design was coming to life. And then we looked at color, and as I said, color was red, white, and of course, touches of black. So what we did was, we said, let's define a new movement called the Neo-Swiss design movement. So we moved from traditional Swiss design to defining a Neo-Swiss movement. So what does that look like? Instead of type being clean, we said, let's distort it. Instead of photography being secondary, we make it primary, but it also brings in distorted realities. Instead of structured grids, we said, let's create dimensions. And instead of just relying on print all the time, we live in a digital age, we need to create something that is digitally friendly. And more importantly, we asked the question of, what about color? Do we stick to the traditional Swiss codes? Our first instinct was, no, let's move away from that. Let's bring all the colors of the rainbow under luxury, and let's work with that. But we started thinking. And then we said, every design movement is defined by principles. So how do you bring this design movement into life, right? We're coining something here through the lens of a brand. But if we're going to own it, we have to stand our ground and prove it to everybody. So we said the principles of the Neo-Swiss movement are three. We call them the DMD, distortion, motion, dimension. And that was the basic foundation of everything we did in terms of design and communication for the brand. Distortion comes from what we call illusion. Motion comes from performance, and if you remember Ibrahim talking to us about the brand archetype, which is the performer. Performers move, like I'm moving right now, I think. Dimension is all about an artistic approach, and it's about provocation. This is a brand that wanted to provoke. Luxury doesn't provoke you, unless you're Balenciaga today. But luxury doesn't necessarily provoke, right? Luxury is supposed to make you feel uplifted in a way and is very aspirational. But we said, when it comes to exuberance, we have to own it if we're positioning ourselves that way. So, the Neo-Swiss design philosophy was born out of the DMD and out of this whole idea of creating something new for a new market. It's all about immersive experiences. This is what our brand is really about. It's about distorted conceptions. It's about stimulating the senses and captivating desire. And desire was a very big word, especially when it comes to luxury. and it needed to create a sense of attachment. Now, mind you, we're speaking to a younger audience here. I think there was a couple of talks over the last couple of days that really talked about how you capture your audience at a young age. And even though, as I said earlier, Gen Z doesn't necessarily have the full purchasing power at this point, you have to infiltrate at some point, shamelessly, but it is the truth. And so, Charles Zuber was born.
For the seekers, the malcontents, the fearless. For the outcasts, the nonconformists, and the unapologetic. For the ones who make their life a stage. For the performers who are mad enough to live.
All right, so that's Charles Zuber in a nutshell. So, that's how we introduced it. That's how we launched the brand. So, of course, we designed basic elements from the logo to typography, etc. I'll walk you through all of that very quickly so that we can get to how we launched and activated the brand. But even the logo itself was a take on neo-Swiss. So you'll notice that the approach is still very Swiss in terms of the sans serif typefaces that we used. But of course, cutting off Charles's head, kind of provoking, right? And then, again, how we built it. And then we moved back when it came to color palette. We said, sometimes you need to still play on perception. And as Ibrahim said earlier, the strength of the Swiss movement is still very important to us. And we needed to position the brand as a Swiss brand, even though it is a neo-Swiss brand, but it still needed to follow the codes, which is why we went back to the black, white, and red. And it actually worked out very well in that sense. Then we brought the DMD to life. So distorted text, or what we call distorted type, was a major element of our brand assets system. Not only that, but we also brought dimensional grids. Again, remember the DMD, and you'll notice movement in everything that you see. And of course, more ways to use the grid. But more importantly, we brought in what we call a product feature. The Étoile de Lucerne, or the Star of Lucerne, as Ibrahim mentioned earlier, Charles Zuber was born in Lucerne in Switzerland. And in 1949, he actually joined a school competition to design a Christmas ornament for the Lucerne Christmas Festival. And so he designed this star. And this is sometime in the last couple of years, the star up to this very day still adorns the streets of Lucerne, which is something that we felt was a story that we can continue to tell. So what we did was, we actually took the star, we turned it into a product feature, all right? So we enhanced it and updated it a little bit. And more importantly, it was something that we felt becomes a device that is not necessarily used in visual identity and language, but rather on products themselves. And this is where it went. So you'll see it now on the crowns of every watch that you buy, and it's become an iconic symbol for the brand. This is the Perfos Carl, which is one of the latest watches to be launched. If we want to talk about perception, it's very important. I mentioned the word Perfos Carl. And you might be wondering, where does the word Karl come from? Charles's name is actually Karl. So Charles was actually Swiss-German, but you know what it was like in Europe back in the 40s and 50s. And so what he did was he actually changed it to French. That is the power of perception. So from Karl, he went to Charles. So just a little snippet there. All right, then we had to launch the brand. So what do we do? As every fashion brand does, we actually needed to work on creating assets and visuals that we can work with. But we are working with exuberance. We are working with a neo-luxury brand. We are working with something completely new and young. So our models had to be young. They had to be diverse. They had to be inclusive. So we needed to bring in a big story here. And so you'll see a little bit of a behind the scenes here. Multiple stories being told in this brand shoot. Notice the performance, notice the dancing, notice the movement in water, notice the other dimensions, notice the distorted realities. All of those come trickling down into every story that you tell. It does not just have to be about visual identity. So the dance performances were actually part of the video that you saw earlier. This is our hero. This is the performer, right? All right. And of course, we brought together an entire brand asset library that could work as a visual identity. And then I'm going to skip into activating the brand now. Now, when you activate the brand and when you want to launch it, it's not just about creating a logo and creating a visual identity. As Ibrahim said earlier, today's talk is actually about how great design comes from great strategy. So you saw the strategic implications earlier about how we needed to define it as a neo-Swiss brand, which we did through the visual identity. Now it's about activating the performer. Now it's about activating exuberance. So how do we tie it to that? The first thing is campaign messaging, and this is very important, of course, for all the communication agencies here as well. We're trying to build a brand from the foundation so that everyone else can try to communicate it. So we looked at it as 3 levels. Anything on a brand awareness level speaks to lifestyle. So it speaks to the message of la vie exubérante. And then everything on a product messaging level, so time is an illusion, is all about telling time in the watches. And when it comes to the jewelry line that the brand has, it was all about life being a performance. So this is how that essentially translated into advertising. You'll start to see, again, this is brand advertising. This is not major campaign communication. We turned it into campaigns for the launch, and we designed a few things here and there. I'm skipping over a little bit quickly because we're starting to run out of time. And then, of course, we took over social. Social needed to feel exuberant. It needed to feel playful. It needed to feel young and appeal to Gen Z. But most importantly, we needed to understand how do we launch the brand and where. So we started thinking about this brand being tied to the art world. It's tied to performance. So we found a major opportunity at Abu Dhabi Art in 2022. And so this put us under a lot of pressure because we were working towards an increasingly crazy timeline to get this launched. But tying the brand to a story is very unique, and it's very important for the brand to make sense, right? So you have to build that perception. So what we did here was we said, okay, let's launch Charles Zubair at Abu Dhabi Art. Charles Zubair was actually the primary sponsor of Abu Dhabi Art 2022 last year, and it was the perfect audience that we were trying to engage with. So I'll show you a little snippet of that. So That was the launch last year. And of course now, continuing to tie it to Abu Dhabi, what we did was we also introduced the first Shah Zubair retail store. Now, on a retail level, though this has not been implemented yet, but just so you understand how we tied the strategy into even a retail experience, our recommendation and part of the strategic implications was actually to turn the retail space into a museum-like experience. So think about when you go to any luxury watch shop or jewelry shop. You enter, there's somebody standing outside, they make you feel uncomfortable, they look you up and down, and they wonder, can you afford, can you not afford, right? We wanted to change all that. We did an entire exercise rethinking the experience, thinking about what happens if you enter the retail store, right? And no one's really trying to sell you anything. What we're trying to do is just sell you an experience. We're trying to sell you exuberance, right? And so that was the whole idea under implementation. We can't reveal much now, but hopefully this is something that will come to life very soon. And of course, Shah Zubair was a hit at the Geneva Watches and Wonder in 2022. Watches and Wonders is the biggest watch show in the world. And to be upfront and center in a show like that puts you center stage. So one of the things we're very proud of, actually, is the fact that we got validated through our terminologies. The neo-Swiss term was used on TV. It gives me goosebumps, but actually it wasn't used as neo-Swiss. You'll see how it was used, but Shah Zubair made a huge impact.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Well, let's get into it. Welcome to the show. Picking up on what Andrew there was saying there about it's not a revival. You know, these aren't revivals of old watches, and of course for newer maisons, newer houses, it's easier because they can't go back to their back catalogue and find something from 100 years ago and revive that. So it's got to be something new.
Take Charles Zubair.
Yeah.
Charles Zubair, it's a new house.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not going to.
He has no history to pull back on. Okay. But he has been able to create something that is what I would call neo-vintage. Without a doubt, out of all these watches, that is the most neo-vintage of the whole lot.
Why?
Oh boy, it takes me back emotionally back to the 60s. Yeah. You know? But yet it has a modern touch to it, modern feel, modern material.
It's polished triangular indexes.
There you go. There you go.
I'm stopping you from talking too long about one watch because we're not allowed to do that on this show. No, I love it, but we're not.
So a proud moment for us, of course, because when you coin a specific term and then you hear it being used by people, then then you've done something right. Of course, we've got a lot of media impressions since then. The brand has actually been making it pretty big. They just, as of last week, opened their first, let's say, they don't want to call it a flagship, but the first retail pop-up in Lucerne, the home of Shah Zubair. So that's a very proud moment for the brand and for us. But more importantly, the reason why we were so proud to get on stage today and really show you this brand is because it is the Grand Prix winner of this year's Transform Awards for the MENA region. We believe what we did on a strategic angle and the story that was being told around exuberance, around building a neo-Swiss movement, a new kind of design language for a new luxury entrant, really was what gave us the opportunity to be here today. And I'll leave you with the latest from Shah Zubair.
For the ones who are mad enough to live.
And we say merci. Thank you so much. I'm Saad, Head of Design and Creative Impact at Brand Lounge.
Thank you. I'm Ibrahim Lahoud. We can meet outside for a coffee or lunch. I think it's lunchtime. If you have any questions,
Thank you so much.
Out of time, right? Thank you.